What's going on, you guys? Welcome on back to the channel, where today we're going to be doing a fun little experiment. Now that 1440p monitors are actually affordable on average, we're going to find out just how much CPU power you actually need. And we're going to do that by testing the world's worst ever Ryzen CPU, the Ryzen 3 1200. I get this on eBay from a seller in China for only $20, and despite all the scratches all over the IHS, it works just fine. Now, while we will see what the performance is like since I'll have Afterburner going, the real objective of this video is to see if this old quad-core here cannot bottleneck a modern GPU in 1440p. And to do that, we're going to test it with what I'm going to call a low-end build and a mid-tier build. Now, I really wanted to do this with the low-end system having an Arc B580, but unfortunately they delayed our order again, and now they're not going to be here until late April. So instead, we're going to sub that out for my used 3070, which I bought for a low-end price at $250. Now, the closest comparison to a B580 from what I've seen on all benchmarks, since I don't actually have my hands on one yet, would be the 4060. And now, while I'm going to run both sets of memory at 3600 transfers, assuming this thing doesn't crash on me, the lower end is going to be going with only 16 gigabytes, assuming this is for someone who really only plays stuff like Fortnite or Apex and really doesn't need the full 32 that modern 1440p titles requires. So the games that we're going to test with this setup are going to be older and less demanding games. And once we're done with that, we're going to swap over to 32 gigs of RAM and my 4070 Super to simulate a mid-tier build. Now, once we get to that, we're going to test the latest, most demanding titles out there right now. But before we get to it, I think it's important to establish what an actual CPU bottleneck is. Now, of course, when it comes to CPU differences like core count and 3D V caches and yada yada yada, even in 1440p, of course, a higher end CPU is often going to have better performance than a lower end one. But that's not what we're looking at today, and that's not what a bottleneck really is. A CPU bottleneck is what happens when your processor isn't capable of keeping up with your GPU and can't feed it enough instructions to keep it fully occupied. And if you're running some monitoring software, what that would look like is if you look at your GPU usage, it's going to be below 90 pretty much at all times. So while we're doing this testing today, if my GPU usage isn't above 90% at all times, we have a bottleneck on our hands. And if it's well below that, we have a massive bottleneck on our hands. Now, it's not going to matter too much because I'm not going to do any real overclocking because I don't think this little CPU is really going to survive it. But the testing grounds for today is going to be my B450 Tough Plus that I also just got on eBay for $30. The reason I was able to get this so cheap is for one of my favorite things on eBay: sellers who have absolutely no idea what they have. So not only was the description of this thing marked as the B450M Micro ATX version, which is already cheaper, it was also listed as not working. And the reason that it wasn't working was because it was missing a battery. Which battery? This battery. This battery right here. The $3 coin cell battery that I picked up at the grocery store. Yep. So for $33, I got pretty much a brand new B450 Tough Plus. Thanks, eBay. In reality, I actually gave the guy $50 because I felt bad. I'm a sucker. Time for the build montage. I mean, not that we really need any paste, but I did pay $20 for it, so, you know, protect your investment, right? Alright, so after literally a full night of going back and forth between OBS and the Elgato software trying to get this thing to work right and not have any audio delay or any robot voices, We're finally ready to do some testing. Like I said, this is going to be the one that's really on the lower end of things and really not quite cut for AAA titles and 1440p. So we got only the 16 gigs of DDR4 here in the 3070. But we got our DOCP on, which is XMP, as everybody probably knows. And the funny thing is, this is the first time I've ever seen something say 3603 in the XMP settings like that. It's weird. And it actually defaulted to 3200. Even though this is 3600 memory, but I'm not super confident that it's going to be stable at 3600, considering this is like the cheapest, lowest end Ryzen CPU known to man. But we'll give it a shot. Who knows, if we blue screen, then I'll drop it down to 3200 and we'll go from there. But anyways, let's see how this thing actually games. So here's the gauntlet of games that I had in mind to test these with. Now obviously you can tell there's some older ones and some newer ones. That's for our two scenarios. And like always, I am going to be using the sliders and MSI Afterburner because I truly feel they should just come out of the box this way. Like, the fact that I have to do this, I'm not going to say it bothers me because I'm going to use the monitoring anytime anyways. I'm just one of those people that wants to look at it all the time. But yeah. So starting off in the lower end scenario, we're going to start with Counter-Strike. In this game, despite its popularity, I've never actually played this game. So feel free to mock my terrible gameplay, even though I'm about to play against some bots and it's probably going to be a tutorial I gotta go through anyways, but yeah. Alright, so it looks like we're on the high preset. And this monitor is actually 180 Hertz, but the Elgato can only do 1440 pass-through at 120 Hertz, which is good enough, and we'll still see what the GPU is actually pushing and everything. So like I said, I haven't actually played this, so I'm gonna do a little practice against some bots because I have no idea what the heck I'm doing here. But a deathmatch, I understand what a deathmatch is. 37%. Okay, so yeah, if there was any game that was gonna get bottlenecked like really bad, I figured it was gonna be this one. And yeah, it's definitely not disappointing. At 32%, that's, I mean, the temps are great, but you know, this is definitely one of those situations where lowering the settings is not gonna help. It's just gonna make it worse. But it's even, why are my teammates firing at each other? I don't understand this game. Who's the bad guys? Oh, it's not a team deathmatch. Okay, I get it now. I'm being dumb. I mean, at least it feels super smooth and fine. Like, this is totally playable and everything, but you know, clearly if Counter-Strike is all you're gonna be playing, then I don't think you really need something even as high as a 3070. I heard someone. You. A chicken! Alright, so this definitely isn't the best, but I kind of expected this one to be pretty bad given what our GPU could do with this game. So let's move on to the next one. Moving on up the demanding ladder, we have GTA 5, except it's GTA 5 with a twist. It's the newly released GTA 5 Enhanced, or essentially the PS5 version finally ported to PC to give us DLS and ray tracing. Okay! We definitely have a bottleneck on our hands here. And I have a feeling it's just gonna get worse as we continue. Let's see if we can do anything with settings here to fix it. Let's see if DLSS helps. No, not at all. What if we go to very high and turn off ray tracing? Hey, there we go. That's better. We still got a crap bottleneck on our hands, but at least it's much more playable now. At least it's very smooth, you know, the frame rate's steady above 60. Oh, it's not steady, but you know, at least it's not going under 60 is what I mean to say. And that's good. Ooh, 90% usage. That's a record. This is a cutscene though, so I don't know if that really counts. Anyways though, I think it's pretty obvious how the rest of this is gonna go at this point. And kind of begs the question if it's even worth doing. But in the name of comedy and science, let's do it anyways. Next up on the list while we're in Rockstar Launcher, Red Dead 2. And even with the new GTA Enhanced update, I still think this game is a little bit more demanding. So in this case, it might actually help our GPU usage if we're a little more GPU bound on this one. So let's see what happens. So we're basically on high preset here with DLSS set to quality, and it's certainly not as bad, but it's still not good. I mean, 77% is surely a CPU bottleneck. 88% still a CPU bottleneck. But I highly doubt there's anybody out there that really ever was or still is gaming on a Ryzen 3 1200. But if you're on, say, like a Ryzen 5 3600 or something like that, yeah, you'd probably be fine. Well, I've done nothing to you. I have now. You hit me first. I think we have a pretty clear idea how this one's gonna go and have a still very obvious CPU bottleneck. And I don't think the last game that I have in mind for the budget system is really gonna be any better because it's a darn well optimized game. So let's get to it. The ripping and the tearing, the ripping and the tearing, the pushing and the shoving, it's Doom Eternal. I know for sure a 3070 can push a lot of frames in this game, so the bottleneck's probably gonna be pretty bad, even with high settings. Well, there we go. Well, that's very playable, and this is going far better than I thought it was. Honestly, I thought this was going to be one of the worst bottlenecked ones next to Counter-Strike, but guess not. Guess the winner's GTA. Yeah, going 1440p with a low-end CPU is starting to look not bad. Keep in mind, again, this is an extremely low-end CPU. And I don't think anybody's gaming on a Ryzen 3 1200. So we've still had some not great usage tips, but overall this is still great and, you know, kind of making the whole experiment a little more plausible and definitely a lot better than I thought this game was going to do once again. But with all that being said, it's time to ditch this 16 gigabytes of RAM and 3070 configuration and move on up to the 32 gigabytes of RAM and the 4070 Super and testing some more modern AAA games while we're at it. Alright, so now we got our 3070 Super and the 32 gigs of RAM in a full-on 1440p setup, minus the CPU of course, and this memory is actually 4000 megahertz, but we're gonna leave it at 3600. Yeah, we're about to test some more graphically demanding titles, but they're also more CPU demanding as well, so I don't exactly think faster RAM is gonna help us not get a bottleneck when we're also getting a significant boost in our GPU here. And in the end we had to do 3200 anyways, because it does not like this RAM for whatever reason, and it wouldn't even boot at 3600. So here we are. Hopefully we don't crash later, but I'm not optimistic. So the first game for a full-on 1440p rig, wink wink, isn't even really a new one or a super demanding one at all, but it's one I've been playing recently and I'm kinda just curious to see what's gonna happen here. So let's get into Metro Exodus. So it looks like it's pretty much giving us max settings, which is what I've been playing it on. Heck yeah, HDR. We'll leave that off. Give it a chance. Alright, here we go. Yikes. Yeah, I knew it was gonna be bad, but this bad? I really don't think the next games I have in mind, even though they're more graphically demanding, are gonna be any better, because they're also more CPU demanding. Shout out to the 4070 Super though, getting over 80 frames per second and 40% used. He's ugly. Oh, my ammo go. I remember having more than one bullet at this part of the game. Always a wasted opportunity when you can't use the miniguns. Alright, so clearly this bottleneck's pretty bad, and I really don't feel like watching this whole cutscene, so let's just move on to the next game. First up of the real recent titles, Space Marine 2. And I'm sure this one's gonna need a good bit of time to compile its shaders as well, so we'll see you soon. Alright, so 20 minutes later and we're finally in. And I'm gonna leave the settings as is. This is actually how I played the game on my normal rig with this 4070 Super. The only difference was my CPU is a 9800 X3D versus this Ryzen 3 12 crap hole. So that's not good. I'm not happy. Ay, this is walking into borderline unplayable territory. I could try putting on frame gen, but I don't think that's gonna help considering the CPU is already pegged at 100. Oh, the sound's cutting out. Oh wow, that's so bad. Oh my goodness, this is the worst frame gen I've ever seen. Oh god, I can't even tell what's really going on. Is this guy standing still, or is the game just glitching out? I'm not sure. Somehow I'm still alive. But because I have it on easy. Somehow I parried it. I gotta be honest, for this game, it was far worse than I expected, but considering that, I don't think the next ones are gonna be any better. So here we go, moving on. So we're gonna go ahead and skip Atomic Heart and move on to what I would say is now the second most demanding game I own, which is Cyberpunk. And I really want to try out the Transformer model with this one. I think it's gonna be quite hilarious to watch this CPU try and do that. Okay, and it crashed before launching. Okay, oh no, there it goes. Alright, so considering this is the GPU that I daily drive, I'm just gonna go ahead and leave it on Ray Tracing Ultra, which is the settings that I usually play on. The only difference is I normally play on a 3440 ultra wide. Oh wow. Now that's a bottleneck. I mean, at least it looks good though, right? What if we just turn DLSS off? Nope, still terrible. Maybe turn off ray tracing?
Everything seems okay.
Better, but still unplayable. Now I can at least tell what I'm doing. Alright, you know what? Let's just move on to the final game. Obviously, this is a disaster. And it looks like I'm going to be here all night compiling shaders, so I might as well go ahead and say, it's Wukong. Wukong is the final game. Yeah. Alright, we're back and didn't have to recompile. We're good to go. Let's see how horrible this is gonna be. Oh boy, this is awful. I can't even tell what I'm doing. I don't remember how to play this game. Oh boy, god. This is really bad. What about if we turn DLSS off? Game. Alright, well we can't turn DLSS off. There we go. We'll go native. Hey, 96%, not bad. But again, unplayable. Oh, that's just awful. Oh god, I can't. It can't even load the settings. There we are. Hey, giant frog, let's go get my butt kicked. If I can kill this frog, then it proves that Ryzen 3 1200 is one of the greatest CPUs ever made. Oh, nope, hey, what's going on? Stop there, stop. Okay. Yeah, I think we're good to call it good. Yikes, that was ugly. But this is the world's worst Ryzen CPU, and like we all know, Ryzen CPUs really didn't get good until around Zen 3 anyways. But if you're somebody who's ready for a new rig and wants to make the move to 1440p, I can totally see a world where it would make sense to do something like keep your 3600X and upgrade your GPU and your power supply first. And that way, your 3600X would be more than capable of keeping up with your new GPU in 1440. Unless we're talking something like a 4080 Super or a 4090. Then you might be stretching it a little bit. And of course, an AM5 CPU and DDR5 would get better performance, But at least this way, you can start with your GPU and upgrade the rest of the platform later. And make sure you head to our website where we just put up some new budget builds in our pre-built shop, and they're going pretty fast, so make sure you get yours now. And make sure you stay subscribed or be a new subscriber to the channel, as quad-core gaming is something I plan to revisit in the future with my 14100 that I use for testing. All I need is a spare Z790 and we'll be good to go. So until then, game on, be easy, and we'll see you guys next time.